One cold morning, David woke up before the sun. He lay in bed for a few moments and stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet. There were no messages on his phone. No calls. No sounds from the kitchen. It was his birthday. David smiled to himself and thought, maybe everyone is still asleep. He got out of bed and walked to the kitchen. He made a cup of coffee and checked his phone again. Nothing. No birthday wishes had arrived. David tried not to think about it. He told himself that people were busy. His friends had jobs. His family lived far away. Someone would remember soon. At least, that was what he hoped. He got dressed and left for work. Outside, the streets were busy. Cars moved through traffic. People hurried to offices and shops. Everyone seemed to have somewhere important to be. David waited at the bus stop and soon climbed onto the bus. He found a seat near the window and watched the city pass by. Everything looked normal, but something felt different inside him. At work, David greeted his coworkers with a smile. They greeted him back and continued their day. Nobody mentioned his birthday. David sat at his desk and quietly waited. The morning passed slowly. David hoped someone would remember. Maybe there would be a small surprise. Maybe a card. Maybe a simple birthday wish. But nothing happened. During lunch, his coworkers talked about movies, sports, and weekend plans. David joined the conversation, but nobody mentioned his special day. He smiled, but deep inside he felt disappointed. David knew birthdays were not the most important thing in life. Still, it hurt. A birthday is not only about gifts. It is about feeling remembered and knowing that someone is thinking about you. The afternoon felt longer than usual. David focused on his work and tried to ignore the sadness growing inside him. His phone remained silent throughout the day. When work finally ended, David packed his bag and left the office. The sky was turning orange as the sun began to set. He checked his phone one more time. Still nothing. As he walked home, he passed a small bakery. In the window stood a beautiful chocolate cake. David stopped and stared at it for a moment. A sad smile appeared on his face. Maybe I should buy my own birthday cake, he whispered. A few minutes later, he walked out carrying a small cake in a box. When David reached his apartment building, he climbed the stairs slowly. The hallway was quiet. Everything felt ordinary. He unlocked his door and stepped inside. The apartment was dark. David sighed and placed the cake on the table. Then he reached for the light switch. Click. Bright lights suddenly filled the room. Surprise! A group of voices shouted. David froze in shock. Standing before him were his coworkers, neighbors, and old friends. The room was decorated with balloons and colorful banners. A large birthday cake sat in the center of the table. For a moment, David could not speak. "What is this?" he asked softly. His best friend Mark stepped forward with a huge smile. "A birthday party," Mark said. David looked around in disbelief. "But nobody remembered," he replied. Everyone laughed. "We remembered," Mark said. "We were pretending." David shook his head and laughed. "You had me completely fooled." The room soon filled with laughter, music, and conversation. Friends hugged David and wished him a happy birthday. Warmth spread through his heart. All day he had believed he was forgotten. Now he realized that people had been thinking about him the entire time. They had simply been keeping a secret. As the evening continued, everyone shared funny stories and happy memories. They enjoyed cake, snacks, and good company. The apartment felt full of life. At one point, David looked around the room. His eyes became wet. Not because he was sad, but because he was grateful for everyone there. Each person had taken time from their busy lives to celebrate with him. That simple act meant more than any expensive gift ever could. Later, Mark stood up holding a small envelope. "We have one more surprise," he said. David accepted it and carefully opened it. Inside were handwritten notes from every guest at the party. Some messages were funny. Some were emotional. Some thanked David for his kindness through the years. One note said, "Thank you for always helping others, even when nobody notices." Another read, "You make people's lives better just by being yourself." David felt deeply moved. He had never realized how much he meant to the people around him. Sometimes we do not see the impact we have on others. As the party slowly came to an end, guests began saying goodbye. The apartment grew quieter, but this time the silence felt peaceful instead of lonely. David sat at the table and read the notes again. The day had started with disappointment and sadness, but it had ended with love and gratitude. Before going to bed, David checked his phone one last time. It was now full of birthday wishes, photos from the party, and kind messages from friends and family. David smiled and looked out the window at the city lights. Life was not perfect, but tonight he remembered something important. He was not alone. Even when it feels like nobody notices, there are often people who care more than we realize. Their love may be quiet, but it is real. David turned off the lights and climbed into bed. As he closed his eyes, a smile remained on his face. It had become a birthday he would never forget because he discovered something priceless. He was loved.